Massive security breach at Capital One Financial. A hacker with the online handle Erratic is now in police custody after she accessed the personal information of more than 100 million people, 6 million of them Canadian. This is just the latest in a series of troubling data breaches. In 2017, about 150 million Equifax customers had their credit card and social insurance numbers stolen, including thousands of Canadians. Last summer, 20,000 Air Canada customers were affected when the airline's mobile app was breached. And just last month, 2.7 million Desjardins customers learned their data, including social insurance numbers, had been hacked. So how can Canadians protect themselves from these kinds of hacks? And what can the government and private sector do to try to prevent them in the first place? We're going to take a closer look at that now. Takara Small is a tech columnist, and Paige Backman is the co-chair of the Global Privacy and Data Protection Group at the Toronto law firm Aird and Burles. Now, Paige, the prosecutors in Seattle, as I understand it, are saying they don't believe the hacker here was trying to use this information to create, stolen identities. Does that comfort you?
No, not at all. Her motivation is unclear, but the fact that she was able to get access to the extensive data that she did, and the fact that she did upload it to an environment that could have been accessed is a cause for concern.
You know, and Paige, one of the things I found interesting here is that apparently there was a tip to Capital One that there had been this breach, and then the hacker herself was kind of sloppy with her social media and her identity. If those things hadn't happened, could we be confident that Capital One would have discovered the breach on their own?
I think they may have discovered it eventually, but this certainly expedited it. And one thing that people need to be aware of is that data breaches are often only found out up to 6 months to a year to 2 years after the fact. So it was a couple months, 4 months, approximately 4 months when the data was stolen. We're grateful that the tipster was available and alerted Capital One, or this could have gone on and been far worse.
Takara, in terms of the company itself, in terms of government oversight, do you think there are things here that should have been done that would have protected us, but they weren't done?
Well, I think if we're looking at just in the last couple of months, I mean, Equifax just recently settled a very large lawsuit over a similar breach that took place. And if we're looking at things that should be done on the government side as well as the personal side, I'd say we need to start looking at these breaches as if it's a public security issue, but also as a health matter. I always say, you know, when you look at when there's food illness or food recalls, it's very apparent, it's everywhere. There's a website you can go to look for what items have been recalled, how sick, where you should go, what you should do. I think we need to address when we see public breaches like this with the same type of security and fear as we do other things. And when it comes to personal, I think definitely people will have to be a lot more, I guess, in depth with their credit card history and ensure and sign up for different online sites to make sure that their information isn't being used to apply for credit cards, being stolen for purchases, etc. I mean, the list goes on. That's why it's so incredibly scary.
You know, sometimes these data breaches to me sound kind of like a story that's affecting somebody else. It seems distant. But again, here, if it's 1 million Canadian social insurance numbers, there is no question that there are people watching right now, and they may not even know it, whose information has been compromised. So,
yes.
So Paige, Takara touched on it, but give us some things that Canadians should be doing tonight or tomorrow to deal with this.
Well, first of all, understand if you've got a Capital One account, Capital One will be reaching out or says that they're going to be reaching out in short order. I think they have a lot of information they need to get before they do that. But just step back for a moment and understand that this could happen to whether it's Capital One or any other bank, financial institution. Understand where you're banking, who has your information. Get in touch with them if you feel uncomfortable with how information's handled, and understand how they either mitigate a breach scenario or prevent it and then mitigate it after the fact.
I mean, it's so interesting that Paige mentioned that there's one security measure that I always like to share. And after these types of breaches, we often see criminals take advantage of that in order to contact potential victims, to ask for personal information, or to ask them to send along any information to help claim, potential recoup potential money. And so I would always say to people who have been affected, this is the time you should be the most vigilant as well. Yes, your information was stolen, but there are individuals who may use that as an opportunity to steal that much more.
That's really good advice. One last thing to each of you. I had my information stolen, and basically the police said to me, what you should do is sign up with Equifax and TransUnion, which cost a lot, really to have them checking your credit each week or each month and sending you alerts. Takara, you don't do that.
No, I don't.
Why not?
So I do think those are really, really great. Great course of action. I think that's what people should do. I did do that previously, and right now I'm working towards just being a little bit more observant of my credit statements and what I'm working on and where I share my personal data, because as Paige mentioned, this is just par of the course. You should just assume that any personal information you're sharing with a company or a third party could be accessed at this point in time. And as we've seen with Equifax, there's no guarantee that they'll be able to prevent that.
That's true. Half a minute, Paige. Did I take the right advice from the police and sign up for those, or should I have done something else?
Well, I think absolutely sign up for those. Monitor your credit, monitor your bank statements, monitor transactions with your financial institutions. But also, people need to really understand what information they're sharing. And this is not an if a breach will happen, it's when a breach will happen. So people need to be a little bit more cautious about what information is being provided, and feel more comfortable reaching out to the various companies they provide information to understand their policies and practices, and feel comfortable saying, but I'm not comfortable with that. Tell me why you need it. And then if they can't tell you why they need it, say no.
Hey, you've made me vigilant without making me afraid. That's a good thing. Paige and Takara, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.